I said, "No, Emily. No stake, no ownership. You're an employee, not a partner." Those words echoed in my skull long after the boardroom fell silent. Everyone stared, some awkwardly shifting, others smirking like they just watched a public execution. My throat tightened, but I didn't let him see me flinch. "After 5 years of breaking my back for this company, that's your answer?" I asked, voice steady but shaking underneath. He leaned back, grinning, that smug, condescending grin that had once fooled investors. "You get a paycheck. Be grateful. Ownership is earned, not begged for." A few executives exchanged glances. One even coughed to hide a laugh. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the proposal binder across the table. But instead, I smiled. "Got it," I said, calmly collecting my papers. "No stake. Noted." He chuckled, dismissing me with a flick of his hand. "Good talk. Now please, send in the next presentation, Miss Burns." Miss Burns, not Emily, not operations director, just Miss Burns, like I was his assistant again. I turned on my heels and left before the fury could leak through my expression. The conference room door clicked shut behind me, muffling the laughter that followed. By the time I hit the parking garage, my hands were trembling, not from sadness, but from something sharper, something electric. He had just turned down the one person who had built his entire logistics system from the ground up, the one who saved his company from bankruptcy when he couldn't read a spreadsheet. And now that he'd made it personal, I sat in my car, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. "Be grateful," I muttered under my breath, mimicking his tone. "Be grateful while you exploit me." My phone buzzed, a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Alex Carter, CFO at Frame Group, our biggest competitor. "Still with Stronach? Heard he's bleeding investors. Coffee?" My lips curved into the kind of smile that usually precedes destruction. "Coffee?" I whispered. "Why not?" The cafe was sleek, quiet, and a little too perfect, the kind of place where mergers began and careers ended. Alex looked up as I approached, his tailored suit a few shades darker than his grin. "Emily Burns," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Didn't think I'd ever see you again." "I could say the same," I replied, sliding into the seat opposite him. "What's this about?" He raised an eyebrow. "Let's just say I heard your beloved boss turn down your proposal." I froze, heartbeat quickening. "How would you know that?" "Board members talk," he said casually, "especially when they're nervous. Stronach is desperate. You know it, I know it." I folded my arms. "So, you called me here to gossip?" He leaned forward, his voice lowering. "No, I called you here because I think we can make each other very rich and make your boss very, very miserable." My pulse spiked. "Keep talking." He laid out a plan on a napkin, the way all dangerous ideas began. Frame Group, his company, was about to acquire one of Stronach's satellite divisions. The deal wasn't final yet, but if it went through, Frame would hold majority leverage in logistics, something Stronach relied on heavily. If you were to, say, join us before the acquisition, you could help finalize the merger and, well, there might be room for you to buy in. Not 5%, he smirked, maybe 51. I blinked. 51%? That's absurd. He shrugged. Absurd or poetic? I stared at the napkin, at the numbers that represented more than money. It was control, power, revenge. I'd gone from begging for 5% to being offered a controlling stake, not in my company, but in the one about to eat it alive. "You realize what you're proposing, right?" I said softly. "If this leaks, it's war." He leaned back. "Then let's make it a clean one." That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed the smirk on my boss's face, the laughter in the boardroom, the quiet humiliation that burned like acid. I opened my laptop, stared at my resignation letter template, the one I'd saved months ago but never sent. My fingers hovered, then typed fast. Effective immediately, I resigned from Stronach Industries. Best of luck. I didn't even bother to sign it. Instead, I attached to one more file, something he'd recognize instantly. A logistics projection model, one I built, but with the words "Licensed to Frame Group" watermarked across the top. Then, I hit send. By morning, my phone was exploding with calls. 27 missed calls, 9 emails, 2 texts, one from him. Martin Stronach. What the hell did you do? I smiled at the screen. Exactly what you told me to. Be grateful. By the time I walked into Friend Group's glass tower on Monday morning, I was no longer Miss Burns. I was Ms. Burns, Strategic Acquisition Consultant. The receptionist handed me a sleek badge, my name printed in silver against black. It felt like a new skin. Alex Carter met me in the lobby, holding 2 coffees. "One strong enough to melt your conscience," he said with that familiar grin. "Perfect," I replied, taking a sip. Not that I have one left. He laughed, but his eyes studied me. "You sure about this, Emily? Once you sign the papers, there's no going back. Stronach won't forgive. They'll bury you." I handed him my empty cup. They already buried me when they refused my stake. I'm just digging my way out. We stepped into a private conference room overlooking the city, one of those corner suites where billion-dollar mistakes begin. On the table lay a thick folder labeled Confidential, Stronach Acquisition Framework. Alex gestured toward it. "You'll be the liaison between our acquisition team and Stronach's logistics division. You know every screw in their system, every weakness. You'll help us price it, rebrand it, and gut it. Efficiently." He smirked. Efficiently. He slid a single-page contract across to me. At the bottom, one line stood out in bold. Controlling interest allocation, 51%. Emily Burns. My throat tightened. I glanced up at him. "This is real?" "As real as Stronach's panic attack when this hits the market." I picked up the pen, hand steady, and signed. The moment my signature curved across the page, something in me shifted, like a lock clicking open. I wasn't the employee anymore. I was the storm coming for them. At 10 a.m., the first tremor hit. My old company's internal email leaked, an emergency all-hands call at Stronach. Martin must have seen the press release announcing Friend Group's new acquisition strategist, Emily Burns. My phone buzzed nonstop. Old coworkers, HR, even the head of finance. "Emily, what the hell are you doing?" "He's furious. They're saying you stole company data." "Stole? No, I created it. Every formula, every routing model, my code, my hours, my brilliance." So, I ignored them all. Until one text from unknown number made me pause. "You think you won? You'll regret this. Martin." I smiled. "Finally awake," I muttered. By Wednesday, Friend Group moved like a loaded gun. Meetings back to back, mergers drafted, lawyers whispering about ethics while stock prices twitched like nerves. I didn't blink. I'd lived too long under Martin's empire of intimidation to be scared of paper threats. What he didn't realize was I'd been preparing for this since the day he first called me just an assistant. I had data no one else had. Operational inefficiencies, hidden debts, vendor complaints he'd buried under fake invoices. I fed every piece of it neatly, methodically into Friend Group's system. Within 48 hours, we knew Stronach's vulnerabilities better than their own CFO. "Brilliant work," Alex said, scrolling through my files. "You just gave us the leverage to cut their valuation by 30%. Make it 40. They undervalued me by more than that." That night, Friend Group's board held a private dinner to finalize the acquisition proposal. I sat at the table, flanked by men in $1,000 suits and women whose smiles could hide knives. "To Emily Burns," Alex toasted, raising his glass, "the architects of our next conquest." Laughter followed, champagne clinked, and I felt a rush, not from alcohol, but from power. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. But as I smiled, my phone buzzed under the table. One message froze my blood cold. From Martin Stronix. You think friend can protect you? You signed an NDA. You're still mine, legally and professionally. I'm filing suit tomorrow. I exhaled slowly, the laughter around me dimming into background noise. There it was, his first move. I turned the phone face down and smiled. He's about to make the biggest mistake of his life, I whispered to myself. The next morning, I walked into Friend's legal department like a soldier entering battle. Martin's filed a preliminary injunction, Alex said, waving a printed notice. He's claiming breach of confidentiality, intellectual property theft, and non-compete violation. I almost laughed. Perfect! He frowned. Perfect? Emily, this could block the merger. Not if I trigger Clause 9C. Alex blinked. Clause what? Clause 9C. Stronix's confidentiality clause. It's only valid if the data was owned solely by the company. I hold co-authorship on every logistics patent filed between 2019 and 2023. My name's right there on the documents. Alex's eyes widened. You're telling me? I co-own it data he says I stole, meaning he just tried to sue his own partner. Alex burst out laughing. Oh, this is genius. Oh, it's just starting. By the end of the week, the news cycle exploded. Stronix CEO faces legal setback in data ownership scandal. Former employee holds partial rights to Stronix logistics patents. Rival friend group set to acquire majority stake in record time. And there I was, front page, standing beside Alex, headline blazing. Emily Burns joins friend as lead strategist amid legal firestorm. Martin's face appeared on every business network, pale, furious, cornered. The man who told me I wasn't worth 5% had just watched me by controlling leverage over his entire supply chain. That night, as I stood on Friend's balcony overlooking the city lights, Alex joined me with a glass of wine. You just declared war, he quietly said. I nodded. No, war started the day he said no. Then what's this? I turned. The city reflected in the glass behind him. This is the part where I start winning. He chuckled, shaking his head. You're dangerous, Emily. I learned from the best, unfortunately for him. The subpoena arrived at 6:42 a.m., hand-delivered to my apartment by a man in a gray suit who didn't bother to smile. Emily Burns? He asked. I nodded. He held out the thick envelope. You've been served. The door closed behind him, and silence wrapped around me. The Stronix logo stared up from the papers like a ghost. Stronix Industries versus Emily Burns and Frayne Group. He'd done it. Martin had declared war. I skimmed through the first pages, legal jargon, corporate venom dressed in Latin, until one line froze me cold. Plaintiff alleges that Ms. Burns knowingly transferred trade secrets obtained during confidential employment to secure controlling interest in a rival company. Trade secrets, the dirtiest weapon in corporate combat. I sat back, exhaled slowly, and muttered, so that's how you want to play it. At 9 a.m., I was in Frayne's war room, a glass-walled conference space overlooking downtown. The air was sharp with the smell of burnt espresso and panic. Alex slammed his palm on the table. He's trying to freeze our merger. If the injunction sticks, we can't finalize the acquisition for 60 days. That's enough time for Stronix to pull in new investors. I leaned forward. We're not giving him 60 hours. One of the junior attorneys glanced up. But if the court sides with Stronix? I interrupted. They won't. I'm the co-author of every logistics model he's claiming. I designed them at home on my own system long before they were ever implemented. Alex raised an eyebrow. You kept proof? I smiled. Encrypted backups with timestamps. The room went silent for a moment. Then Alex grinned. "You really thought of everything, didn't you?" I said, "Not everything, just everything he'd underestimate." By noon, the courtroom felt like a frozen theater. The judge sat high above us, flipping through pages, as Martin's lawyers painted me as a disgruntled ex-employee with vendetta-driven motives. Martin himself sat across the aisle, looking far too pleased. He gave me that same smile, the one he used the day he called me Ms. Burns. I met his gaze and didn't blink. His lawyer finished the opening statement with flair. "Your Honor, this is not a case of innovation. This is theft disguised as ambition." My attorney, a calm woman named Dana, stood and replied simply, "Then let's talk about ownership." She slid a folder across the table: digital forensics reports, creation timestamps, patent records, all under my name. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Ms. Burns, are you confirming these were your original works?" I said, "Yes, Your Honor," my voice even, and Stronach used them without attribution. I simply took back what was mine. Martin shifted in his seat. For the first time, he looked unsure. Dana continued, "In fact, we have documentation that Stronach filed to remove Ms. Burns' co-authorship from the patent 3 months before her resignation, an act of bad faith." The courtroom gasped. Martin's face darkened, and I smiled, just a little. The injunction didn't stand. The court ordered a temporary suspension of claims pending further review, which meant one thing: the merger could proceed. As we left the courthouse, Alex whispered, "That was surgical." "I told you," I said. "He taught me how to survive corporate betrayal. I just perfected it." But my victory felt incomplete, because deep down, I knew Martin wasn't done. Men like him didn't stop at losing, they scorched the ground beneath them. And he proved me right. The sabotage started 3 days later. Frayne systems crashed mid-meeting, then confidential merger documents leaked online, unsigned drafts, incomplete, but damaging enough to rattle shareholders. "Data breach," the IT lead said grimly. "Origin trace leads to Stronach's proxy servers." Alex cursed under his breath. "Martin's gone feral." I scanned the digital report, heart pounding. The breach wasn't just sabotage. It was precise. Every leaked document was one I'd personally handled. Someone inside Frayne had helped him. I straightened slowly. "There's a mole here." Alex froze. "You sure?" I said, "Positive. He's feeding Martin everything I do. Someone close." "Who?" I met his eyes. "Let's find out." We launched a silent internal audit, just me, Alex, and the IT lead. Every file access, every internal message, every login after hours. At 2:17 a.m., the logs revealed it. A hidden user account tied to an assistant in acquisitions, S. Patel. She joined Frayne 3 months ago, referred personally by Alex. I turned to him, voice flat. "You recommended her?" He blinked. "She was vetted. I cut him off. "Don't swear. Fire her. Quietly. Before Martin knows we've caught her." By dawn, S. Patel was gone. Terminated, devices confiscated, legal on standby. But the damage was done. One final leak had already hit the press. Frayne acquisition faces insider scandal. My phone lit up with calls. Investors panicked. The board called an emergency session. I stared at the headline, jaw tightening. Martin's fingerprints were all over it. He didn't just want to win. He wanted to humiliate me publicly the way he did in that boardroom years ago. I looked at Alex. "He wants to break my name before the merger closes." Alex nodded grimly. "He's betting you'll back down." I said, "Then he doesn't know me." At 11 p.m., I sent Martin one text. No lawyers, no filters. Just truth. "Emily, you wanted to teach me a lesson. Here's one for you. Never gamble with someone who wrote the rules." No reply. Just those 3 dots. Typing. Then they disappeared. He was rattled. Good. Because in 48 hours, I was about to make my final move, one he never see coming. I didn't sleep that night. The city outside my window glowed like an electric battlefield, and I was done waiting for permission to win. Martin thought humiliation would make me retreat. Instead, it sharpened me. He had forgotten the first rule of power. Silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. At 4 a.m., I opened my laptop, logged into Frane's secure terminal, and began drafting a document I'd been building in secret for weeks. A contingency acquisition plan. But this wasn't about Frane acquiring Stronix's division anymore. This was about me acquiring Stronix itself. By 9 a.m., I was in Alex's office, folder in hand. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Emily," he said, rubbing his temples, "we're still recovering from that leak. The board is jittery." I dropped the folder on his desk. "Then let's give them something worth shaking about." He glanced at the cover. Project Phoenix, Controlling Takeover Proposal. He looked up sharply. "You're kidding." "I'm not," I said. "Martin's company is bleeding. Investors are desperate. If we move fast, I can buy out controlling shares through intermediaries. I already have 3 of his minor partners willing to sell." "You want to buy Stronix?" Alex's voice rose, half disbelief, half awe. "Emily, that's suicide." "No," I said coolly. "It's symmetry." By noon, we were in a hidden meeting suite 10 floors below Frane's executive wing, a place used for negotiations no one was supposed to know about. The air smelled of burnt coffee, stress, and adrenaline. 3 men sat across the table. Stronix's minority shareholders. They looked nervous, eyes darting between me and Alex. The oldest, a silver-haired man named Cole, cleared his throat. "Ms. Burns, you understand Martin will retaliate if he finds out we're here." "Oh, I'm counting on it," I said. "He built his empire on borrowed money and fear. I'm offering you something better, stability and profit." I slid a document across. "Frane will buy your shares discreetly under a holding name. You'll walk away with double your investment, and Martin will never see it coming until I hold 51%. Cole stared at me for a long moment, then signed. One by one, the others followed. Each pen stroke felt like a nail in Martin's corporate coffin. At 5 p.m., the call came through. "Emily," Alex said, voice low but urgent, "Stronix just held a board meeting. He's scrambling to pull investor support. Rumor is he's planning to sell assets to cover debts." "Perfect," I said, walking toward the elevator. "That means he's desperate." "Where are you going?" "To watch him drown." The Stronix oving loomed like a glass fortress, cold, sterile, and full of ghosts. I walked straight past security, heels clicking like gunfire on marble. The receptionist blinked. Miss Burns," I said, flashing a polite smile. "Tell Mr. Stronix I'm here to discuss ownership." Her eyes widened, but I didn't wait. I already knew the way. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, Martin was pacing his office, shouting into his phone. His voice dropped when he saw me. You have some nerve. 51%, I interrupted. He froze. "What?" I pulled a folder from my bag and laid it on his desk. Inside, signed share transfers. Proof. "You refused me 5%, I said quietly. "So I bought 51 from your partners." His face drained of color. You couldn't have. "Through a shell company. It's already approved by the exchange. You'll see the filing in the morning." He stared, speechless. "Congratulations, Martin," I said softly. "You now work for me." The silence was heavy, almost holy. Then he laughed, a short, ugly sound. "You think this is over? You think you owning numbers on paper gives you power?" I met his gaze. "No, Martin. Owning you does." His jaw tightened. "You can't run this company. You're a glorified operations girl playing CEO." "Maybe," I said, stepping closer. "But I'm the operations girl who built your system, cleaned your mess, and just bought your board out from under you." I leaned in. "And you're the man who underestimated her." He slammed his hand on the desk. "You don't have the guts to fire me." "Watch me." I took a deep breath and said it like a death sentence. "Effective immediately, Martin Stronix, you're relieved of your position as Chief Executive Officer. You'll receive severance pending review, assuming you don't violate your own contract clauses." For the first time, I saw it. Fear.
the kind he used to inspire in everyone else. I walked out before he could speak, my pulse roaring like applause. Downstairs, Alex was waiting by the car. "You did it?" 51%, I said, sliding into the seat. "The deal sealed." He exhaled. "Jesus, Emily, you just bought the man who built you." I looked out the window as the city lights streaked past. "No," I murmured. "I bought the man who tried to break me." But even as victory settled in, something in my chest twisted. Power felt colder than I imagined, heavier. I wasn't sure if I'd won or simply become the thing I'd hated. Then my phone buzzed. "Unknown number. This is Nover. You think you own me, but you'll lose everything soon." I stared at the message. My reflection in the glass looked different now, sharper, almost dangerous. "Let him try," I whispered. Because tomorrow, the press would know. The shareholders would cheer. And the man who told me I'd never own a piece of his empire would wake up to find I owned the whole damn thing.
Morning came dressed in headlines. Former CEO ousted in overnight takeover. Emily Burns, now majority owner of Stronix Industries. From employee to executive, the most ruthless coup in corporate history. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Reporters, investors, even competitors wanting a quote. The city was whispering my name like it had never heard it before. And yet, as I stood before the glass wall of what used to be his office, something felt quiet. Too quiet. Martin hadn't called. He hadn't shown up. No public statement, no press defense. And that scared me more than any lawsuit ever could. Because silence from a man like him meant only one thing. He was planning something. By noon, I was buried in meetings, legal, PR, finance, all orbiting me like nervous satellites. Alex burst in, breathless, a folded document in hand. "You need to see this." It was an emergency filing from Martin's legal team, time-stamped this morning. Petition to void share transfers on grounds of fraudulent acquisition and undisclosed liability. "What liability?" I asked, frowning. He looked pale. "It's Stronix's offshore debt. Hidden. Hundreds of millions." I blinked. "That's impossible. I reviewed every statement." He buried it under a dormant shell company, Stronix Asia Holdings. It was never declared in U.S. filings. And now, since you're the new majority owner, I'm responsible. I finished. The realization hit me like ice water down my spine. I hadn't bought a kingdom. I'd bought a corpse. That evening, I found him. He was sitting in a corner booth at the same cafe where Alex first called me weeks ago. He looked calm, too calm, sipping espresso like a man watching his own funeral. "Took you long enough," he said without looking up. I slid into the seat opposite him. "You buried debt under fake accounts. You planned this." He smiled. "Of course I did. You thought you could outplay me? I've been in this game 20 years, Emily. You didn't buy control. You bought liability." I clenched my fists. "You forged documents." He chuckled. "I didn't have to. Everything was legal. Creative, yes, but legal. And now, every creditor, every regulator, every investor will be knocking on your door." His voice softened into mock sympathy. "You wanted to be the boss, right? Congratulations. You get all the glory and all the blame." For a second, I couldn't breathe. He'd set the trap before I'd even realized it was there, like a chess master letting me take his queen while my king sat exposed. I could walk away, sell everything, let it burn. But no, that wasn't me. I leaned forward. "You think this ruins me?" He raised an eyebrow. "Doesn't it?" "No, it completes me." He laughed, but I kept going. "You wanted to drag me down in the mud, fine. But you forgot one thing, Martin. I am the mud. I know every dirty corner you built this company on." I pulled out a flash drive and set it on the table between us. He frowned. "What's that?"
Evidence, I said. Wire transfers, offshore accounts, falsified contracts, all tied to your personal signature. His eyes widened. You're bluffing. Am I? His phone buzzed once, twice, as his lawyer called. Then again, another message, then another. He looked down. His expression shifted from arrogance to horror. Breaking. SEC launches investigation into Stronach's former financial filings following whistleblower report. His hand trembled slightly. You reported me? No, I said softly. You did. Every time you sent me those confidential reports, I just archived them, waited for the right moment. The cafe went quiet. Even the hum of traffic outside seemed to fade. I stood up, voice calm but sharp as glass. You gave me power when you underestimated me. Now I'm giving you what you deserve, accountability. He stared at me, face pale, rage fighting through disbelief. You think you're clean in this? You think the board will let you keep anything after this scandal? I smiled faintly. I don't need to keep it. I just need to end you. 2 weeks later, the headlines flipped again. Former CEO indicted for corporate fraud and offshore tax evasion. Stronach under new leadership. Emily Burns steps down amidst restructuring. I watched the news in my now empty office, a box of my belongings at my feet. The empire was gone, dismantled, liquidated, restructured under new investors. I'd given my shares to a recovery trust, ensuring the employees got their salaries, the debts were paid, and the name Stronach was scrubbed from the market like a bad memory. As for me, I was free. That night, I returned to the cafe one last time. Same table, same quiet hum. Alex joined me, setting down 2 coffees. So that's it? You really walked away? I nodded. I didn't want his throne, Alex. I just wanted him to know he couldn't own me. He smiled. You burned the whole kingdom to prove it. Sometimes, I said, watching the steam curl off my cup, you have to burn it all just to see who survives the fire. He looked at me thoughtfully. And what about you? What's next? I shrugged. Something new. Something mine. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Heard what you did with Stronach. We're building something better, and we want you to lead. I smiled, slow, knowing. Looks like the ashes have some use. Alex laughed softly. You're unbelievable. Correction, I said, standing. I'm unbreakable. As I stepped into the cool night air, the city stretched before me. Endless, glittering, ruthless. For a long time, I thought revenge was about winning. But now I knew. It was about rewriting the story they tried to write for you. Martin's empire was gone. His name, tarnished. And mine? It was finally my own. I walked away without looking back, whispering to the wind. 5%, huh? Guess I over-delivered.